Today we're going to be taking a look at the remaining V-EB02 cards, which is mostly Granblue, which is fine by me. I've done a bunch of testing, especially with the Granblue stuff leading into this video, so I have some in-depth thoughts to really give on these. So, starting off with Granblue, we have something that is very scary, to be honest. This is Violence Franger, which basically enables Granblue to have an unstoppable attack. On VNR, it can Soul Blast to grade 3 and discard any number of cards from hand. It gets power plus 5k for turn, and during its battle, your opponent cannot guard with Sentinels from hand, or any cards with the same grade as the cards you discarded. Now, I thought this card was going to be like a pretty essential 1 to 2 of in my early testing, because this just means, okay, get your opponent to 5, and then you drop this and kill them. However, what I found as I started really testing against the big meta decks like OTT and Kagro is that it's very unrealistic to have the resources to pull off this kill. And it's way more important to use that space to run 3 to 4 Skull Dragon, so you're getting that going as soon as possible. Because you need to start forcing damage, forcing out PGs, having this unit that retires itself so that Kagro impacts you less, all that kind of stuff. It's very important. And Violence Franger just doesn't really work out. It turns out to be a bit of a win more card, to be perfectly honest. Then we have Witch Doctor of Decay Negro Breach, which is very similar. It's very similar to Skull Dragon in a bunch of ways. Like, it's a big power beater that on on VNR, it gets plus 10k if you have 10 or more cards in your drop zone. And it has the ability to revive itself to Vanguard or to Rearguard by counterblasting 2, which is expensive, but it's self-reviving. And this can allow you to guarantee yourself a Protect gift in a situation where you really need it, which is pretty nice. And in addition to that, you're able to just have this 22k attacker that doesn't leave the field, and your opponent is going to have to deal with it if they want it gone. It's not as high impact as Skull, but in certain situations, I think, particularly against OTT and Dimension Police, it's going to do about similarly, perform about similarly. So it's pretty solid. It's way more important to see those Skull Dragons early, so I would only run 1 or 2 of this. I also find very interesting, so say for example Zanbaku and their Arresters for Murakumo work similarly to the way they did in the manga, which is they set up this combo where your Vanguard is stunned and you cannot ride from hand without paying an additional cost. Negro Breach would give you an out to that whole combo. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind as the AL4 reveals start up. As a Granblue player, I'm going to be keeping my eye on that in particular. But Negro Breach is a solid card. Not something you're going to want to run many of, because Skull Dragon early is way more important against the top tier of the format. But it is a solid card nonetheless. Moving into grade 2s, we finally have the full details on Commodore Blue Blood. We got some small details on this from the most recent anime episode, but now we have the full deets. So, Commodore Blue Blood gets plus 4k during your turn as long as there's another copy of him in the drop zone. And when its attack hits a Vanguard, you can retire it to draw 2 and discard a card from your hand. So basically, it's Gary Gannon as an attacker that can hit solo, which is really good. It's something that you can put out early game to really force your opponent to guard your swings, give yourself some more pressure. It's just a solid card in general, to be honest. It's going to combine this with a 2 critical Vanguard and the ability to pass crits to your big Skull Dragon or whatever big attacker you have on the other side, and it's just really solid. And just hitting 13k solid solo is really good. And yes, it's a fantastic card. Honestly, what I found in a lot of my testing is that I don't even go into Ruin Shade late game. Once I have my 10 and drop set up, I'll just start reviving Blue Blood because I don't want to mill myself too much, so I don't often go for the 17k with Ruin Shade, since if I want that kind of power, I'll just go for Skull Dragon. And Blue Blood, with the same 13k, is applying a lot more pressure. So I find it way better in most situations. Fancy Guy Alvaro is not a card that's really going to make the cut. When revived, it gets plus 10k for the turn. Like Negro Breach and Skull Dragon hard outpace this. There's just no real point to this. Like it's not worth it. It doesn't really do anything, and there's no space in your grade 2 lineup. Skeleton Bomber is a cool little meme card. If you have 3 or more in your drop zone, you can counterblast 1 to call up to 4 from your drop zone to separate rear guards. And until end of turn, they get power plus 4k and boost. I honestly think this is a really cool card that could be fun to play around with, but it's obviously not going to make the cut in competitive builds, just because like there's no way to like if it was just like revive itself and it can boost or something like that, then that might be solid. But because you need so many and thus can't tech it, like it loses all potential value it could have had. Norman the Ghosty. This card is freaking fantastic. So it's a 7k grade 1 that can retire itself from rear guard and mill 2 to give one of your other units power plus 10 for the 10k for the turn. So the really fantastic thing with Norman is this is an instant 3 cards and drop, which really helps with reaching the 10 drop early. And then if you have like a Night Mist or a Baskirk, which you will 90% of the time, you then revive it again and do it again to get 5 more in drop, and combined with like earlier Ruin Shade in Romario or Guarding or whatever, it's very easy to get yourself to that 10 drop on your grade 3 turn with this card. So it ends up being very essential because of that. Yeah, it's a very great card. It combos so well with Night Mist, making Night Mist hit better numbers, like hit for 2 stages solo instead of like with a boost it would have only been hitting 1 stage against Force Clans. And it can also boost like things like Commodore and Ruin Shade when they're up at 13k, so that they're hitting for 3 stages solo. It's just really good. This card is really fantastic, and honestly, I think the icing on the cake is the fact that it's 7k. Now, you might see that as a drawback, but there are big benefits to actually having grade 1s that are below 8k in the right scenario. Because 7k isn't a power line that's really going to be able to be punished for you riding in 7 and 8k. There's no real power lanes that early in the game that's really punishing that specific value. And what it allows you to do when you go second is when your opponent rides a Circle Magus or a Romario or is any clan that needs that counterblast for their second turn that really helps them get going. You ride this or Dancing Cutlass, and you swing in, and you either hit a trigger, good times, or you damage deny them. They don't get the damage. You still got your Drive Track plus, and all things are dandy. You can also like call Booster if you want to pass triggers to, if you so choose. But I don't think that's generally worth the investment, but it is something you can do. And Dancing Cutlass. There were some concerns about Counterblast usage in Granblue, but this card came in and instantly saved the day. Just when there's 2 copies of it in the drop zone, you can bind 1 and mill 1, revive itself, and countercharge 1. This being 6k is really great because 1, it means that you don't get punished for riding it. If it was 1k lower, you could get punished really hard by like 20k attackers like Bracky and stuff, or 15k attackers. All that sort of stuff will have started making additional stages against it, but because it's 6k, it is just short of being able to be punished by most things. There are a few things that can punish it, like turn 2 any grade 2 category unit with Airmo hitting 21, or Akane plus Pongos hitting 21. There are a few small things like that does punish it, but it's not much. And when you can potentially get damage denial out because of the reasons I already mentioned, that's very good. In addition to that, this is one of the highest quality pluses in the game. It's a free revival and countercharge 1. The one downside is that it does decrease the overall size of your drop zone. But you can get this off like typically 1 or 2 times in a game, maybe 3 if it goes on really long. and you're getting a +1 off of that because this is hitting like just good enough numbers. Like if this is behind like Negro Breach or Baskirk or 17k Ruin Shade, then that's the perfect numbers to get them up to Force numbers, which is perfect. And in addition to that, we have putting it behind Night Mist, because like against Force, unless you're investing with Norman or something, you're typically not getting the greatest 2-stage columns against them. But if you're hitting 15k, that's enough to hit one stage. And also, if you need to swing at any of their rears, you're hitting for 2 stages against any rear, which is, you know, better than hitting 1 stage. So it's fantastic. Every use of this card you get off is an additional +2 to your overall advantage, and this card is a huge contributing factor to Granblue's ability to have one of the highest advantage ceilings in the game right now, only really matched by Tachikaze. Like Oracle Think Tank is converting each of its counterblasts into a +1, but if it wants to do more than that, it needs to -1 with Gemini. So it's outside of the stuff it gets from heals, it's locked in at using those 5 counterblasts for a total of +5 throughout the game. You get a lot of you get a lot of quality control in OTT, but you're pretty hard locked at that +5 for a game. In Granblue though, you can go much higher than that. You have in a game you can go up to the 5. Normally counterblast usage is usually subtracting 1 because of Romario. Then up to 3 more pluses with Dancing Cutlass, well, usually only 2. And then 2 more with the counterblasts you freed up by using Cutlass, and that's without taking into account any heal triggers that come into the equation. So it's really fantastic. I love this card so much. It basically saved Granblue from the issues it looked like it might have. Okay, moving into Disappointment Land, we have Maelstrom. The effects right there, guys. There's been a lot of talk about this. As the guy who defended Alfred, this isn't good. This isn't good. I've yet to see any formations with Aquaforce, Maelstrom specifically, that really impressed me any more than Nova's formations, especially now that the new 12 grade 3 builds have started coming out. Like, I'm just not seeing anything that's really impressing me with this deck. And I just don't... Maelstrom really was not the fix they needed. And really, they're going to be... The best build is most likely going to be focusing around Naval Gazer, the trial deck boss, because that's actually doing things. It's actually giving you more attacks. It's actually getting you more value. It doesn't lose like a bunch of its value because your opponent is at 5. Like, Naval Gazer just kind of wins in this exchange. And part of that is because of this very odd thing that happened. Because Storm Rider Diamantes is the triple rare grade 3. Now, okay, so when it attacks, if it's the first battle of that turn, it gets power plus 3k until end of turn. And then on rear guard, once per turn, when it attacks, if it's the 3rd battle or more, counterblast 1, discard a card, stay on this unit, and it gets power minus 3000 until end of turn. Okay, so here's a very weird thing about this card. This card seems designed in a way where you want to attack with it first, then somehow stand it, and then get the 2 attacks with its own restand ability. Still hitting 12k or 22k that whole time. So this is freaking bizarre because the only way to do this is with the trial deck boss. I don't really understand the design mentality behind this card. Like, you would think that if you were going to design this card this way, you would have made the card that does the restanding, what Naval Gazer is filling, the VR, since that's the card you want people to go for. But no, it's a trial deck boss. Like, Aquaforce is going to be pretty cheap by the looks of it because of this, but it's a super strange design. Like, I do not understand it at all, but whatever. Whatever. We, of course, also have Tidal Assault, who is very simple. Soul Blast 1 when it attacks once per turn to stand it. And if it's the 2nd battle or more, it gets power minus 5k until end of turn. More multi-attack enablers. And Trident Shooter, This is your swapper. At the end of its battle, when attacked with Vanguard, if this unit is on an additional rearguard circle, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and exchange its position with one of your other rearguards. Basically allowing you to get extra value out of your Excel circles by swinging with this on an Excel circle and then swapping it for something else. Which is a pretty cool concept to have around the deck. But if I understand what I've been seeing going around in this, this hasn't really been making the cut, probably because of the cost and because it's useless after that first thing. And lastly, moving into Dimension Police. First up, we have the final foil for Dimension Police, Commander Laurel. This is Counterblast 1, rest 4 of your rearguards, and you choose one of your units, which can be rearguard or Vanguard, and until end of turn, you double its power, the power at the time it was chosen, and it gets critical +1. So this isn't very good with OG Dayusha, but you can use it to buff one of your rearguards, which can be pretty nice. But the real value thing with Commander Laurel is when you're on Great Dayusha and you haven't killed your opponent yet, and you need to be applying pressure, like Commander Laurel really helps you pick up the slack there. Like if you've misridden into Great Dayusha as your first ride, or it's just after you've done your first Great Dayusha turn, this allows you to pump that Great Dayusha up to big numbers, give it an additional crit, and make it easy to enable that second Great turn if you have the Great in hand to do it. So it's pretty solid. It's not really a necessary card, but it can be very valuable on like a 2-of slot because of that. Mass Police Leader Sylvard is a pretty interesting card. If your Vanguard's power is 30k or more, it gets power +5k, critical +1. Like, passive crit on a rearguard is pretty solid. Like, not really something to scoff at. It doesn't have a gift, but this I could easily see this having a place in decks. It's a pretty nice card, to be honest. Mass Police Grander did not become the card that would push out Cutie of giving on-hit draw pressure. Because it's just, if your Vanguard's critical is 2 or greater, this unit gets power +5k. Like, I don't see that as worth at all. Like, for power beaters, like Cosmo Beak and Die Dragon are just so much better. And this doesn't really offset the value of having something like Cutie to give you some potential plus. But that's just my take. And lastly, we've got Miracle Fairy Lelapi, which is a support thing for Miracle Beauty, which is very weird. Apparently there's some budget deck with some big combo. I haven't really paid too much attention to this card, to be honest. But I do find it interesting that Miracle Beauty got this stuff going to it. And kind of makes me feel like Yuri from Kotei's team from the original anime is going to show up using this deck. But we'll see. We'll see. That's going to be it for this video. Oh, this went kind of long. But sorry for the drought of content in the last week. I was just taking a bit of a break to play a bunch of Octopath Traveler. And because I forgot my SD card, so I wasn't able to record matches last weekend. So that kind of happened. But content will be returning to its daily stuff with next week. And as I said, I've got a stream that I'm doing, best of 7 stream with my good buddy Tachikaze versus Granblue. Then the playback of it will be available, linked in the description below or here in this end card. But with that said, this is Hunter Surge signing off.